It is the Welcome to Cooperville podcast. It's episode number 73. So that means, and I was doing this math because I was going through some analytics on the back end of the the website and the podcast downloads. And we just went over, I think, 11,000 downloads of the podcast. So thank you all for continuing to be a part of it. But I was trying to math it all out, and usually these things average, an hour and a half. There were some that have gone like 3 hours. It's like 100 and some plus hours of conversations with people, and it's been an absolute blast. And we're happy to be able to, of course, now do the live stream stuff. So if you are tuned in on Facebook Live or on the Cooperville YouTube channel or on Twitch, that's twitch.tv/No Limit Cooper, otherwise the Twitch app. We appreciate it. Get your comments in there if you have a question for Jimmy Hayes Nelson, who's going to join us in just a bit. Get those in there, and we'll be answering questions throughout. Gonna be a great day. First things first, though, big thanks out to the sponsors of the show, Midwest Meals at midwestmeals.com, taking the pain in the ass out of meal prep. That's what they've done for me. So I go every Monday because they're local. I go to the store every Monday. I get my meals for the week, and I am completely set for lunch and dinner Monday through now with their new super duper extended not lifetime warranty, but longevity they have on their meals. I get like 10 days to eat these meals. All the macros are counted on there, your calories, your proteins, your fats, your carbs, all the stuff you need to know. And perhaps the best part, cleanup is a fork. This is my time-saving entity, is I just clean forks all day. That's my life. The lean turkey tacos I talk about a lot. That's kind of become my jam as of late. The lean chipotle bowl, the barbecue pulled pork. They just have 13 rotating meals. So every week they're adding in new stuff, and you can go check them out at midwestmeals.com. Here is the awesome thing is they do ship nationwide. So wherever you are in the continental United States of America, go to midwestmeals.com, enter the promo code Cooper at checkout, and you can get 10% off your first order at Midwest Meals and midwestmeals.com. Monster Energy, also proud sponsors of the podcast. I got my Monster Hydro jamming out to Purple Passion, even though I do have a passion against the color purple. That's a Vikings thing. It's still delicious. And they have their two new super sports, the Blue Streak and the Red Dog, 1,000 milligrams of branched chain amino acids. They got vitamin B3, vitamin B6, 200 milligrams of caffeine, super hydrating. And when you have winter, Jimmy doesn't have winter anymore, and we'll talk to him about that because he lives in Texas. But up here, when you have winter, you don't even think about being dehydrated when you're, outdoors doing things or going throughout the course of your day, because you don't feel that, that supreme dehydration that you normally get during the summer month here. Did I say month? I meant 2 months, maybe sometimes 3. But winter, still a time that you need to be hydrating, and that Monster Super Sport Hydro is for you. Hashtag Monster Podcast. Jimmy Hayes Nelson has been, this is, I think, third time's a charm, the trifecta. He's completed the trifecta on being on the program now on episode number 73. Welcome back, my friend. It's good to see your face.
This is great. I think this is the first time I've been on a show 3 times. And so this is nice. I feel like a semi-regular now.
I know. We really need to get like an award. Like we send out like little trophies and stuff. Like you survived 3 episodes.
Right, 3 episodes. Yeah, I'll just have like the plaque back behind me as everything. It'd be great.
You get a little trophy case right behind you. Be like, here it is. As you can see here, here's my trophies. How are things, man? Things good?
I guess, like you said, I guess they're probably warmer here than they are there. It's nice. It's actually I can see the sun outside. We've hit some 30-degree days here in Dallas, but it's actually pretty nice here, and things are good. Welcome to the off season. We've been in it for a while here in Dallas. I know it's a rough week for you guys.
I normally don't I don't get super sad
right
after games, even last year. Okay, so Jimmy's a huge Cowboys fan. I don't hold that against him. He's great. He's got great football knowledge. Oklahoma, he's got the smarts to talk about this kind of stuff. So I knew we'd touch on it because you can probably see by the sadness in my eye that I'm still reeling.
Yeah,
from Sunday's game, but like last year. And the weird thing was when we talked in November, and a lot of flashing back here, but we talked in November of 2019. At that point, Mike McCarthy was still the head coach of the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, now, we haven't talked since that switch. We almost need to do our own like football episode, maybe here, or I don't know if you played around in the Clubhouse app yet, but I'm like, that would be a good place to have football conversations. So
But it's been, you've obviously, you guys picked up McCarthy in the offseason, so there's a lot of tie in here. But so we get a new head coach, and Matt LaFleur. Nobody really knew much about him, especially from up here. We all wanted the sexy hire with Josh McDaniels,
Right.
out of course the Bill Belichick lineage of coaches. We
Sure.
see he's still not employed as a head coach, but that's neither here nor there. But you watch last season, you're like, wow, we went 13-3. Aaron looked, rejuvenated. Obviously there's growing pains when you have a new offense in there, but you make it to the NFC Championship game. But you make it with this reserved, it's kind of cool if we lose, because we really didn't expect to get this far with a rookie head coach. First time
you were playing with house money. It was like, oh yeah, this is not bad for year one, right?
And the Niners last year their defense was lights out. They were, and our run defense was porous for the whole season.
Yeah.
And how we managed to get there, and we lost. And it was like, you know what, man, this bodes well for the future.
Yeah.
This year, however, just with the way they seem to, outside of the 3 losses, they seem to just kind of dominate. We used to have these moments to be like, oh, well, we're down by 3. That's the game. And I was like, nah, we're good.
Right.
So you went into it with that confidence. And I was never really one to be bragful or boastful about, being in the playoffs. But it was this last week. And I'm not blaming myself. It's only weird if it doesn't work. Well,
right.
It didn't work. But I'm like, I'm posting the new, Wheezy did a song for us. We're getting all excited and just pumped. Packer, small, socially distanced Packer parties.
Right.
But just jazzed because we just kind of felt like,
this is the year. Yeah.
Like Aaron's going to go back.
Yep.
And but to lose the way they lost.
Yeah, when Brady throws 3 picks and you still lose, that sucked. I was really I thought the nostalgia of having a rematch of Super Bowl 1. Well, I was hoping for that last year. You get the Packer KC, nostalgia of Super Bowl 1 and 2 rematch. So I thought it'd been great. I really didn't have a dog in the hunt, and really I was rooting either way. And people say, as a Cowboy fan, don't you have a beef more with Aaron Rodgers? And I should. I've been in the stadium here and watched him rip my heart out at the end of games at least twice. And on the flip side, so if we talk about where we are now, I've never been a Brady hater. And as a guy who's 43, that dude's my age, right? And so my brother's a huge Patriots fan.
Right.
And so when Brady went to Tampa Bay, I'm like, you mad that he lost? He's like, no, the Pats are still my team. He's like, but now that we're out of it, he's like, I would love to see, Brady continue to do well. And what's so amazing to me is watching this guy at 43 years old do what he does. And I've never been one that hates a team just because they're good, or hates a player just because they're good. Now, if I don't like you for other reasons, you jump teams a lot, if you got issues with LeBron because he continues to be a hired gun, that's one thing. But Brady just being Brady, he seems like a good dude. And there's nothing where I'm like, this is why I hate him. Because I feel like a lot of people just hate the good team because I'm tired of watching them win. But I think there's something to be said for looking at anybody who's done something at the highest level over a long period of time. I geek out on that. If I look at my own career and I think of, let's look at me physically, lost 100 pounds. The fact that I've kept it off over 10 years, almost going on 15 years now, or being in business for 13 years. I am not comparing myself to Tom Brady. But what I'm saying is I appreciate people that can do something at a high level for the long term. I think these teams that come in and hit and go away, it's just rare. It's just rare to see anybody continue to set a standard and raise the bar and continue to excel at that. And I appreciate that with musicians, with athletes. And so, it's going to be crazy going into this Super Bowl because you have Brady going to his 10th Super Bowl, which is nuts in and of itself.
In 21 years, 10 Super Bowls in 21 years. And he was injured for one of those years. He tore his ACL in the first game. I can't remember what season it was. So in 20 years of actually being the starting quarterback, 50% odds. 50% of the time he's going to Super Bowl. Yeah.
And it's crazy because then you see Mahomes come along, and being a Big 12 guy. I grew up in Lubbock, Texas, right? So the rest of my family are still huge Texas Tech fans. And I like to see him. I was the dirty traitor that jumped ship and went to Oklahoma. But I've been watching Patrick Mahomes since he's in college, and it doesn't surprise me that he's come in and done what he's done. But I'm like, what a fascinating matchup this is going to be of, the greatest of all time, and then what somebody's coming up and wanting to be. And then with Patrick Mahomes, you don't want to, not that he's not amazing, but the fact that he already has a Super Bowl helps. But you didn't want him to go down like the Dan Marino route, right? Like the huge arm, amazing talent. But I mean, even look at Aaron Rodgers, look at Drew Brees. Let's say this is the end for both of them, which I don't think it is. Maybe for Drew. But you look at those two guys, and both one Super Bowl apiece. Aaron's been to 2. Aaron went to 2, right? No, just the one.
Just one. Yep.
Just the one here in Dallas against Pittsburgh, right?
Yep.
And crazy. So you think about that. And in fact, I was listening to something earlier. You think about the Packers franchise altogether, all the years of Favre and all the years of Aaron, one Super Bowl apiece. And that's just crazy to have that much talent at the quarterback position. Same thing with Drew Brees in New Orleans, right? Like Hall of Fame level. And you hate to just say, oh, they only have, because some people never get one. But you look at that and you would think they would have more than one opportunity to win a championship.
I think a lot of times you look at a guy, I think Tom Brady has tilted the scales in the direction of multiple, but you've had those guys before. You had, Terry Bradshaw.
Right.
You had, Montana. You had Aikman.
Aikman here. Yeah.
So, and then you had Brady, who's, one, he's running out of fingers, to put Super Bowl rings on. So I think you have the standard is set for what, even when you're not a amazing quarterback.
Right.
And yeah, I'm biased, but as far as pure talent goes, and man, I want to watch that guy on Sunday with a football in his hand. Aaron Rodgers is the guy.
Absolutely.
Regardless of if I'm a Packer. You watch Brady on Sunday. Yeah, he did some amazing things, but there was nothing sexy about it. It wasn't, he's not, he's just so in command of that position.
And isn't that crazy? It's never, it's so great because with Brady, it's never the, oh my gosh play. It's not the Patrick Mahomes play, but he is that guy that will come up, smile at you, put his hand on his shoulder and be like, hey buddy, how you doing? As he cuts your heart out, smiles at you, and then leaves. Like he's that guy, it's just again and again and again and again. And there were a couple of those times when he would throw up, some of those interceptions were bad. Just toss up. And I was like, man, Brady's not having his great game, but you had a feeling. And it was really weird when it was the two of them, because both of those are quarterbacks that if they have the ball last, you're just like, here we go. I know as a Cowboys fan, anytime we played Aaron Rodgers, you leave him anytime, you just have no confidence, regardless of what the defense has done the entire game, that they're going to get a stop right there. Yeah. But that was that going into that game. I'm like, well, there's two guys here that whoever has the ball last, you think that's who's going to win the game. Yeah,
there was a lot of question marks, I think, that came out of the game because we went in, because I'm obviously I played for them. We proverbially.
I Cowboy stuff all the time, so it's fine.
We really went into this game with confidence. Yeah, we did. But I think you saw so many missed opportunities.
Right.
You get 3 picks on a guy. I don't care if it's Tom Brady or who it is.
Right.
That sets you up when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers on the other side. That sets you up not just to win, but to win like
handily,
go away fashion. Yeah, you take those 3 picks, you get something. You get 14 points out of those 3 picks. This is a different ball game, and you and I are. Well, I'm celebrating. I'm probably still doused in champagne from 2 days ago.
Right.
But when you don't capitalize on those things, and I think it does go to show you can be the best. You can be the best team, but when you have the Brady factor, and the way that he elevates the players around him, and let's not, their defense is good.
Yeah.
The defense is great. I think they have plenty of offensive weapons. It's going to be a great Super Bowl. I will watch with sadness and reflection and be like, oh, the could have beens, but no, I think it was a great season. You guys in Dallas had when your starting quarterback goes down, and before that he's throwing up like how many 400-yard games did he have? He was lighting the world on fire.
Yeah, it sucks when you're throwing up 400-yard games. You're still finding ways to lose those.
And you're still losing. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
We got a lot of issues like we do for the past 25 years here. So we'll see. We always look really great on paper. Like if you were going to put together a Madden roster or a fantasy team, the Cowboys are great, but when it comes to actually winning and losing, we shall see,
How did you feel about that? I mean, how did you feel about coming down to the last week of the season and having a shot at getting in the playoffs, knowing that it was the last week of the season, wasn't it? It's like somebody like Washington had to lose, and then somebody else had to lose.
We had to beat the Giants, and Washington had to lose, and that was it. But that's nothing new for us here in Dallas. Half the Garrett era came down to win and you're in. I can think of 3 different games with Romo where it came down to win the last game of the season, and you win the NFC East at 9-7.
Yeah,
and every stinking one of them, we laid an egg. I mean, the Cowboys are really the worst front-running team I've ever. When nothing is expected of them is when they show up. And the years that we're picked 3rd, or the year that Romo gets hurt and Dak comes in as a rookie and nobody expects anything. But any year where they're like, this is it. We've loaded up. Cool. We got CeeDee Lamb. Hey, now you got Mike McCarthy coming in. You got all we're going to switch to a more aggressive defensive scheme. Here we go. Nope.
But they still, and that's just the NFC East though. They still keep you intertwined in the scenarios right up until the last game, the night game of the season.
Oh, because we all suck together. It's crazy to think that in the 90s, the late 80s and the early 90s, that this used to be the baddest division in football. And now it's just been outside of I take that back. I mean, I guess the Giants won 2 against the Patriots, and the Eagles got their 1 and then already fired that coach. So, at this point, you've been to 2 straight NFC championship games. I haven't seen an NFC championship game since 95.
I guess I should be grateful then. I should be.
So, I mean, it could be worse. Now, I guess we could all be like, I can't even say, what's so crazy? I was about to say, well, at least we could be Cardinals fans. I'm like, they've been to a Super Bowl. Like, there are very few teams right now that I can say a Detroit Lion fan. Like, it's like the list is getting shorter. Like, well, at least I'm not the Houston Texans and my quarterback wants out and that's a mess. But there's not many teams left for me to go, well, at least I'm not, because most of them have at least been to a championship game since we've been.
It's a weird, and the offseason is going to be even stranger. I mean, there's, obviously there's Aaron Rodgers rumbles, which I think he kind of quashed today. He was on the Pat McAfee show, which is fantastic. If you've never watched that with former Packer AJ Hawk as his cigar smoking cohort on there, but he did kind of quash some of the rumors. He was really, when you get done with that kind of game, and this is any athlete.
Yeah.
After anything, I can't say any athlete, because if you're an MMA fighter, if you're a boxer, you plan for a long time, yes, but you're not in the grind for 7 months.
Oh no. Like, it's crazy how long to prep for the NFL season goes and how quickly it goes by. I will go through a mild depression after next week because it just goes by so stinking fast. And I'm a basketball fan. I'm excited about, the Mavs are doing their own thing right now, but things are cool here with Luka. The Stars went to a Stanley Cup last year. Like, we got other things, but for me, it's like football, and then there's this chasm for the other sports, just me personally, but it is crazy how long the grind is, how quickly it goes by, the things that these guys put their bodies through, and then it's just done, or just thinking at like how quickly careers go by. We were talking about, when I'm watching, I don't know if you ever go through this, but now when I'm watching guys in the league and I remember watching their parents play in the league, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm getting old. Like, Antoine Winfield Jr. is a safety. I remember Antoine Winfield Sr., right?
Yeah, for the Vikings.
Yeah, so it's kind of nuts to be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Or you see an entire career come and go and somebody's retired and moved on. And it does remind you how short some of these careers are. But if I can just take this as an application for a minute, it also shows, if I look at my own life, it shows how we have different seasons of stuff. And what we're doing now is not what we will always be doing. Or we talk about like your career, like radio and that, like where things have gone. And it's really funny how we never know what season of our life is prepping us for the next thing that we don't even know is a thing. So for me, if I look back in my performing and my acting career, that didn't necessarily peak where I wanted it to peak or go places, but it prepped me to jump on here on a camera with you and know how to handle myself in an interview situation, or, now really specifically a lot of 2020, I taught a lot of workshops teaching business owners and entrepreneurs how to create a signature talk. And what do I mean by that? Like a signature talk where, let's say they have a keynote speech or they do one of these virtual like stages, but they can also use that same talk or these same stories inside a podcast interview or on their own YouTube channel, or if they're doing Instagram Live or a Facebook ad thing. It's like, okay, what's the story? What's the personal 1 to 2 minute story to kind of let me know who you are? And what's the bridge to your call to action, or what's your product or service? I had no clue that spending hours in a theater or on a TV set was prepping me to do this, because that wasn't a thing, and I literally just came off. It was the biggest stage of my life in December. I had 4 days notice to go to an event in Vegas. It was a network marketing global training event that they usually do live there at the MGM Grand with Eric Worre. And what they had done is they had built a 360-degree like stadium, not a stadium, like a studio, I guess would be the word for it. And the screens, it was 15-foot high walls that were just LCD screens all the way around. And when they would turn on, like you want to see the crowd, it was just Zoom screen, like little Zoom squares all the way around. And I could pull anybody up and interact with them, or I could ask for like the chat box on the side. And somebody asked me, like, you had 4 days notice. Were you nervous? And I was like, no, to be honest, I wasn't. And I think it was just all these little hidden hours that I had spent in front of a camera. So really, yes, I was in front of 40,000 people, but I literally had 4 cameras and the camera guys there and the other speakers that I was introducing, and then could just reach out to people on the screen and interact. But it wasn't the same energy you feel jumping on like a live stage in a stadium. But it was, but like I said, you just never know what you're going through now. And maybe it's the struggle you're going through now that you're not happy about is literally creating a callus or creating a skill or putting you through some gauntlet to where you really can come out the other side and you get to shine in this next opportunity that you didn't even know was coming.
I think 2020 has done that for a lot of people. When you talk about, and I don't want to say everything was like wine and roses, before March of 2020,
right.
As we say on the 1 year anniversary of the death of Kobe Bryant, I know that's been
crazy,
kind of all over. So, but you look back at the year that was, I feel like there were signs things weren't going to be fantastic. I mean, just on a global scale, you had everything in Australia was on fire. Remember that in January?
Yeah,
it was insane. And we were watching this stuff on TV, and there was these horrible videos of koalas trying to escape wildfires, and everybody's just, oh my gosh, but perspective wise, when you're far away from something like that, far away from that kind of element,
right?
It's like, wow, that's really bad, and you feel bad. And I know a lot of at least in the artist industry, a lot of people were reaching out and helping out with those things. The Kobe death came up, and there was a lot of it transcended outside of sport, because of the type of person that Kobe was, as far as a motivator, as somebody who was a go-getter, somebody who went and got after it. So it really kind of transcended everything. And then all of a sudden you have March that hits, and the world shuts down.
Yeah.
So a lot of people had to go through a lot of tough times, whether it was, losing a job. For me, I ended up becoming a teacher to a at that point, 9-year-old. I'm like, oh, so now I'm a homeschool teacher,
right?
Part of my gig. If you could be quiet, well, I've been doing, live streaming for over a year now. And he would come down, and all of a sudden here'd be me and you talking, and here's this little head that would just all of a sudden creep in and then creep back out.
Yeah.
I was like, it's live, so it's okay.
Yeah, here we go. It is crazy, just because you bring up the Australia piece, and I was like, oh yeah, that was that year. Yeah. And then, I was looking on social media today, and the Kobe thing came up, and I'm like, holy cow, that's been a year. I remember exactly where I was. It was a Sunday. It was a Saturday or Sunday. It was a weekend, because I was at brunch with a friend of mine, and we had literally just left brunch, and he texts me and he's like, "Oh my gosh, did you see this?" And you know what's crazy is I had heard, maybe it was Gary Vaynerchuk in an interview not long after that said, had COVID and quarantine hit 1 month earlier, Kobe's still with us because he's not traveling, right?
Yeah.
And it's so crazy how and where things happen, and things we have, obviously we have no control over these things and where and how the dominoes fall. But it does make you try to figure out how to, I feel like it's hard for people always to have some kind of urgency, right? And I look back on my career and how I stumbled accidentally into entrepreneurship is I had my back forced up against the wall, right? So I was in New York City struggling as an actor. I'm passing out chocolates in Times Square, and stories I've shared with you and your audience before, and $60,000 in debt, and stuff's not working out. And so I had to go find or create something. And so for so many people, I find that people may not be exactly like stoked with where they are in their life, but the pain point's not enough to go do something else either. Like Les Brown, one of my favorite motivational speakers, shares this story about there's this old guy on a porch with his dog, and the dog's moaning and groaning, and a little kid comes by and he's like, "Hey, what's wrong with your dog?" And he's like, "Oh, my dog's sitting on a nail." And he's like, "Well, why doesn't he move?" He's like, "Oh, it doesn't hurt enough to move. It just hurts enough to moan and groan." And I always go back to that story because I look and think, man, my situation was really awful. When I found myself as a 100-pound overweight, 3-time college dropout, things weren't going well. I had to hit bottom and really look at myself in the mirror and go, stuff's not going well. And I only had one direction to go. But I really have what I've learned in working with people that are like, and try to be more empathetic with certain people that are like, hey, I'm not living my ideal life. I'm not doing the thing I love to do, but where I'm at's not bad. And so sometimes it's hard to leave good to get to great, right? It's hard to leave something that's comfortable, but it's like, gosh, how do I do this thing to move out of there? And I've only met a handful of people that were willing to get out of their comfort zone before their back was pushed against a wall or some tragedy hit. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, this year was that as well, And so while I'm not going to say, I don't even want to say it's a blessing in disguise. How I will say it's put a lot of people in the situation I found myself in. It was like 29, 30 years old by the time I was like, I got to do something else,
right.
And so, and what's so, you're always looking for the silver lining and things like it was a tough year for everybody, but but you go back and you look at the depression, you look at 2008 with that crash, and you hear all these stories about the businesses and the innovations and the millionaires and the empires that were all built in the midst of a tragedy. And I hope that as a silver lining, we look back at 2020 and the next things that come out of this year and the next year, the same way we look back at 2008 and saw, wow, this was really rough on an entire country economically. That wasn't even health-wise. That was just an economy. But that things bounced back, that things were going. So what I'm hoping is in 2021, or that people started planting seeds in the midst of all the crap last year, that they start seeing things bloom this year and the next.
And I think it's tough when you're in it, like when you're experiencing, however you experience 2020.
Right.
By the way, and I've said this before, we're in the 13th month of 2020.
Right. It's just going, right?
You thought it was going to, like, the calendar was going to flip over and all of a sudden be like, poof, look, normalcy. But no. But I think however you absorbed 2020, whether it was a job loss, whether it was a furlough, whether it was, getting sick, in an extreme case, however you experienced this year, when you're in it, it's kind of sucks.
Oh, absolutely.
And we talked about embracing the suck on the last podcast we had. And again, this is an extreme forced suctitude, because if you're kind of just moving along in life, and you kind of think you got things figured out, you got you got your job that you feel good about going to every day. It doesn't, you're not dreading getting up and going to work.
Right.
So I think I like the people you work with. You like your family, because you get to see them like 5 hours a day. None of this 24 hours
captivity
stuff. you feel like you're in a good spot. And then when forcibly you're taken out of that element and you're put into this position that you're really not, nobody's used to. You're having to learn different ways of doing things. Kids are having to learn different ways of doing things. My kid brings home, math work, or not brings home, I should say, when they were doing virtual.
Right.
I'm like, this is not the math that I was taught or that I thought I was going to try to save in my mind.
Right.
So I'm like a monkey trying to do a math problem. Like, I have no idea. Like, can you?
You'd moved on that part of your life. You're like, that was behind. Like, that's not my job anymore.
Haven't used that yet. So I was hoping never to have to. But people had to go through all these things, and when you're in it, when you're going through these motions and having to adjust every day to the new life, to new rules and regulations, to kind of the doom and gloom on social media, which is another topic that we talked about even before COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're in it, you don't really realize the things that you're maybe learning. You talked about calluses. That's a great example. Like, you kind of get used to this thing that kind of sucks and doesn't suck so much anymore.
Yeah.
But if you do ever get a chance, and maybe some people already have, if you're back to work, or if you're, your kids are kind of back in school and you're finding this kind of this new normal, you get to kind of look back and say, you know what, all those times that I said I never had time to do things with my kids, or, learn something new, or, read this book, or listen to this audiobook, or listen to this podcast, start a podcast. People, when you get a chance to kind of look at it as a whole of 2020, you can start to kind of pick and look at things that, wow, this really, now I know how to do this.
Right.
Like, now I've figured out how this part works. I really found that I like to, listen to audiobooks, and I've kind of gone down this rabbit hole of podcasts, or, all these things that maybe you took something out of. You don't really notice it while you're in it because you're too busy, your mind's too busy being cluttered by all the negativity that's going on. But I think there's so many positives that can be taken out of going through a negative experience, or something that has been, detrimental to a lot of people economically, physically. You and I we're both probably watching this thing go down and go, wait, now we're forcing people to stay on the couch. Like, this doesn't seem like it's a good idea.
Right.
It could be a better way.
Well, it's crazy because I've also been really impressed and inspired by people that I've seen lean into learning a new skill set, or using this extra time that they've been at home, and literally just investing something in a pure joy part of something, whether that's starting to dance again, or learning a skill, or, or cooking, or, what I've been going down the master class rabbit hole a bit, which is a subscription-based thing where you can learn all these different things. And it's been cool watching some people go, hey, this stinks. I have this extra time. I'm going to lean into something that's been a hobby, or I'm going to learn a new hobby, or I'm going to go into something, and then them actually being rewarded by that because they've started to post and share that, or maybe they've gotten good at something, and that brand dealer, that sponsorship reaches out, or they find an audience that goes, hey, can you teach me to do that? And they create this other job. But you're right. And when you're in the middle of it, it completely sucks. I think of it, again, if I can go back to my time in New York City as a struggling actor. I remember when I first started in business, hearing no often, right? As we as entrepreneurs do. But I used to get asked by friends that had like actual 9-to-5 jobs, in New York City, to be like, so how was auditions and stuff today? And I'd be like, oh, I was like all over the city. By the time I got home, I'd walk somewhere like 13 to 15 miles, it felt like. And so how did they go? And majority auditions you go into, like, you go in, you're maybe in the room for 2 minutes. They listen to you sing or read a script or something, and you get, okay, thank you. And you learn to know that thank you just kind of means, it's a polite way of meaning no.
Right.
And it stinks because you start, not only do you think that you're not talented enough, right? You have no evidence showing you that what you're doing is working. Like, you're going to class, for me, I was investing in an acting class and a singing class. I'm like, I'm wasting money. I am not getting any kind of return, even just like very many like attaboys or pats on the back. But what it was doing was, once I got into this, to a world where I was offering a product or a service in the different businesses that I've been in, no didn't affect me the same way because I was used to persevering anyway. If I never went to the next audition in New York because I heard a no, or I never got a call back or something, my time would have been very short-lived.
Mm.
So I was developing that skill of how do I separate my self-worth from a yes or a no or attention. And the other part that I thought of when you were talking about that was, and I was just sharing this story with my trainer today. When I was in New York, there was my scene study teacher and my vocal coach were friends, and they did like a 6-week musical theater scene study class. So we paid, at the time, I forget what it was, but for me, it was like really uncomfortable. Like I was like, I don't know that I can afford this, but I was willing to invest in my skill set. I'm like, these are two of the best teachers and coaches in New York City. They have, they've worked with all these amazing professionals. I want to know what they know. And what they did is they put us in this 6-week musical theater scene study class. And what they did, there were probably like 20 of us maybe. And each of us would get like 4 or 5 scenes and songs. Some you were the lead in, some you were like singing this little piece of harmony, or you were a background player. Some were a solo, or maybe it was 2 people, some were 6. And basically they threw more material at you than you could master. Mm-hmm. So it got really frustrating. We're like, okay, cool. We don't have time to get this one exactly right because we got to run to this next one. And maybe one's opera and one's, traditional musical theater, and this one's pop, and this is a rock thing. And then we had a showcase where they invited agents and people in the industry, and it wasn't ready. It wasn't polished. And I remember feeling so self-conscious. I was just mad. I was like, I can't get all this right. I want it to be right. I want it to be perfect. And it wasn't until really afterwards that my musical theater and my voice coach, who is this like sweet little old man in his 80s, who's kind of the Yoda of musical theater in New York City, named Jack Lee. He's like, Jimmy, the point of this wasn't for it to be perfect. He's like, we wanted to throw more information and more stuff at you than you absolutely could master, to just start learn to embrace feeling overwhelmed and moving forward anyway. What do you do with it? And he's like, 6 weeks from now, it's going to move from this like chaos in your head, and it's eventually going to make its way. It's kind of sink into your gut. And then you're going to start seeing it in your day-to-day when you go to auditions, how you react, how you do things. And he was right. Like 6 weeks after that, even though the showcase didn't spark any agents or gigs for me, I started having better audition experiences. I started getting callbacks. I started, like, once it had time to just kind of digest. I look at the same way once I started to embrace, like the personal development pieces that I start my day with every day. When I first was starting my morning with 10 minutes of audio or reading some book to really challenge how I'd been thinking up to that point in my life, it all seemed like noise and seemed overwhelming. And it was asking me to change so many areas of my life. And like, this just isn't how I am. And so it wasn't an overnight change. But then I saw later in life, as I continued to invest in the books or the training or the mentorship or listening to audios in the morning, that later on when tragedy would hit, or later on when something that used to trigger me in a negative way would happen, I saw that without thinking about it, my just gut, without thinking about it, reactions were different or more positive, or with learning to use something in the past, I would have been defensive about, or I would have been a victim about, or whatever. And so I guess I say all that to just reiterate the fact that when you're in the middle of the trial, you don't see the benefit. The Karate Kid doesn't see why painting the fence makes any sense, because what he wants to be, he wants to go kick ass in the tournament. You're like, why are you making me paint the fence? So in the middle of the mundane, we have to embrace sometimes, because it's going to show up later when it means the most.
I think there's so many anecdotal things to take out of that, because when you hit it on the head, when you're the Karate Kid analysis is great, because Cobra Kai is apparently like the biggest.
Right, which I need to watch. I haven't yet.
No, that's the one thing I was kind of upset. I got into like The Mandalorian, but everybody else is like, have you seen like, here's 40 shows? I'm like, okay, I didn't find that much free time. Like,
right.
I don't know what happened there. But again, there's, that is just a platform, knowing the audience and saying, nobody's going anywhere. Here's 35 shows and, 700 hours worth of stuff for you to sit and binge watch. But I do think you're right, because when you have that chance to experience the same thing, go through the same trial, and maybe not exactly the same, after already having experienced it, how are we gonna do this with that? There's the kids home, I moved over the course of the summer, it was just like I don't know how those days, those moments in time when you're just you feel completely overwhelmed by just all the chaos that's going on. And then another similar circumstance can arise and you can go, wait, like I felt this pressure before.
Yes.
I've gotten through this, this trial, this tribulation, this moment in time where I had to, overcome something, or maybe I didn't overcome it. Maybe I failed at it, but from that failure, and I know it's something that you've touched on, in some of your live stuff and on some of your Instagram stuff. But when you experience that failure and you look back on it, you go, okay, that's what I did wrong. That's why, I didn't get from A to B, is because I was too busy not paying attention to really the end game here.
Yeah.
So when people get a chance to, I think, look back on 2020, as much as you can scroll through social media, which you shouldn't do, at least for too long, you can see, even still now in January of 2021, there's still a lot of negativity. There's a lot of ho-hum. There's a lot of, kind of the downtrodden are speaking louder than ever.
Yeah.
And not just COVID. I mean, obviously there's a whole political landscape and there's a whole, whole other realm of things that are upsetting to people. But if you really can dissect your year and say, we didn't get to go to that concert. We didn't get to go to that game. We didn't get to do our, our family reunion thing, but I did get to spend a lot of time doing this.
Right.
Or, for me, developing, and thank you for the compliment when we first opened about, developing, how does this, what can I learn about taking my podcast from just being an audio source only to, incorporating some video, incorporating some live streams, again, on budget zero.
Yeah.
How do you do these things so that when the time comes for this to grow, this is just a part of it? Like, I know how to do that now. I know how to,
Oh, because you've set up such a great base. It's, again, like what I was just saying, like, how do you choose to be resourceful in the midst of a tragedy, or amidst of, like, going back to the personal development thing, what I love, Jim Rohn talks a lot about, like, it's not what happens to us. Like, good and bad is going to happen to all of us. 2020 happened to all of us. Now, in different realms, some people lost jobs, some people lost lives and loved ones, but 2020 happened to everybody. Let's take 2020 off the table. Tragedy, none of us get through this life without some bullshit happening, like without something bad happening. And so it's not that, and this isn't going to be the last thing, right? And so it's not what happens to us, it's how we react. And the way he talks about it is, what's the set of your sail? So if I look back and think, when I started my first business, when I first got started in the health and fitness industry, it really was in 2008, in the midst of this, like, economic crash. Now, I would love to tell you that it was this grand plan. Like, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps and I was super positive, and I knew these little steps I was taking in 2008 was what was going to get me financially independent and allow me to live this life of freedom. I didn't know any of that. I just knew this is bad, and I can sit and focus on that this is bad and wait for something to hopefully come change, or somebody to come save me, or I can get my ass to work and start. I knew nothing about business. 3-time college dropout. Social media was brand new. I couldn't jump on it. There were no podcasts to teach me anything. I couldn't jump on YouTube and watch 20 hours of how to do something. It's kind of a blessing and a curse now, right? Because now you can jump onto this podcast. If you really, like, literally, without investing in any class, you probably could go learn how to start whatever you wanted to right now.
Right. For free.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, again, I hate to continue to quote Jim Rohn. He talks about success. The little things every day to be successful are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. Right. And it's like, oh, tomorrow, or the days I feel like it. And then that compound effect happens. If you ever read the book by Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect, it's where we are today is because of all of these little tiny choices over time. And if we only show up, or we only get out of our comfort zone on certain days, we feel like it, we only get so far. And it's like we get some momentum, but the day we continue not to continue to keep the momentum rolling, it's kind of like the ball rolls back down the hill. Right. And sometimes we just got to continue to show up. And so if I think about me, my business, I wasn't a fast starter with this thing. I'd made a decision that I was going to be in it for the long haul. I knew what it was like when I was allowing other people to dictate my earning potential, what I was able to do, Like the minute, even like I think about like that very first little like $20 I made online or anything, it doesn't change my life, but it does go, oh, okay, if I can do this once, if I just keep showing up, I can do it again and again. And that's where that compound effect kind of takes over. And the other thing you touched on that I just want to make sure like people don't miss is that there is still a lot of noise and negativity out there, right? And there always will be. It is always going to be easier to complain and focus on the negative. And that's not just an attack on pessimism. That's how our brains are wired. Our caveman brains are wired to protect us. And so it's always looking for what's wrong and what's dangerous. And so we just need to acknowledge that to go, cool, this is how we're wired. What can I do about that? And so for me, I go back to that morning routine as this concept of I have to attack my mind every morning before it attacks me. Because negative, victim, scared Jimmy of everything, that dude that I was, still lives in here. And if I don't give it something else to focus on, if I don't pour something into me first thing in the morning, he still shows up 15 years later. Like he didn't go anywhere. I just have to, it's something where I have to choose to go and fight that battle every day. I have to choose to continue. How do I keep this momentum going? And it's not by hoping I feel better or have a good attitude or, because if we just wait on our emotion, man, it's going to kick us in the teeth somewhere.
I think another added layer into all that is, we talk about having to overcome things. And we even talked about Netflix in there. Again, if I'm an exec at Netflix, man, I'm taking my money to the bank. I'm like, everybody's getting a subscription to Netflix. Everybody's streaming shows now. But what happened is over the course of all the crap that's going on or was going on, continues to go on in 2020, whether it's with COVID, whether it's with school closings, with your favorite, I MC 2 big music festivals here, or one music festival, and I'm a part of another one. Both obviously postponed until this year. All the big things were going away, and people get down on that. Well, then there's this introduction of things that will distract you, that will take you away from your own reality. And I've had this conversation with many people, but you have Netflix, and then if you're a basketball fan, you kind of had the NBA season, you kind of had a little bit of baseball, you kind of sort of did. And if you're like you and I, we just talked about in the open here, huge football fans, and we just got through 5+ months of all these things we got to talk about. Every single week there's a new game, there's a new topic, there's a new thing, all the distraction. Then you have like Tiger Kings and Mandalorians and
all the shows, and they're wonderful, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, somebody's genius idea was like, hey, you know what? All these people are stuck at home, and guess what? We're going to, take advantage of this.
Yeah.
So when you lose all that distraction, when you lose all the stuff that's kind of filling up the frontal cortex, and it's all, I mean, okay, you know what? I was sad after the Packers lost. Of course I was. It happened. But that distraction is now gone. And what it opens up, if you allow it to, is this like sense of clarity. Like, okay, as much as I invested into watching, 16 games this season, now is the time to really focus on my beard company, to focus on the podcast, where we want to take this show to. Like that compartment is now free and clear of thought.
Right.
But you can continually get wrapped up in distraction in order to really disregard reality, disregard what you want to do. Like, gyms aren't open.
Yeah. And I want to jump in real quick here. And I think where I've had to try to find a little bit of balance is it isn't necessarily all or nothing. And it is, we all need some escapism, right? I've watched as many shows. I'm jumping into a bunch of documentaries. I've watched all 2 seasons, both seasons of The Mandalorian. So I don't want people to think like, wow, Jimmy's really hardcore in the fact that, or, Coop's talking about that we shouldn't have any leisure entertainment. And that's not the point. I just think it's being aware. I think you nailed it. And so if I say, cool, for me, I know Sunday, I'm going to invest 6 hours into football, right? I want to make sure that these other days I'm doing something towards a goal. I'm taking some baby steps every day towards whether it's creating something, what's the next level. So for me, in 2020, it was this shift was adding another business piece, right? Had been in the health and fitness industry for a decade. And then it was moving to really using what I had learned as a public speaker, as an actor and storyteller, to work with entrepreneurs and businesses and people that are wanting to create something. I'm like, oh, let me teach you how to tell a story that leads to your product and service. Well, if I want to launch that, I have to sit down and be very, very intentional with, hey, I need to take a few steps every day. It doesn't mean I can only do this all day long, and there's not a time where I let my brain relax, where I do plug into something just because it's mindless and it's fun. Right. But you're absolutely right. It's really easy to movie, this series, whatever. And the people in those companies aren't dumb. They know we got people at home. Let's continue. And it is a distraction. And sometimes escapism is nice as long as we're aware of how much time we're investing in that, because we don't want to look up and look at. It's crazy to me to think Kobe's death was a year ago. I mean, it just shows you how quick a year goes by. Right. And so we look up and a year's gone by, and it was like, what do we have to show for it? Have we started at least continue to take baby steps in a direction to build or create something? And I think the other piece of this that came out of 2020 is that whatever, I think I already knew this because of my experience in 07 and 08, but I think for once, society as a whole realizes that the safe American dream of the safe job, that isn't, right? That it was I think a lot, for me, I knew because I'd seen friends and people I'd seen in 08, I watched billion-dollar hedge funds disappear in New York City in 2 weeks. But the further we're away from a tragedy, the more we forget that was a thing, right? And so I think more than now than ever, it isn't don't have the 9-to-5 job. It's not don't have the traditional thing. But I think more now than ever is, in addition to this leisure time, find some time to start investing in creating something that is yours, that can be a secondary income stream. Even if it's like a baby income stream that's like, cool, this takes care of my cell phone bill, or here, this is my Target budget, or this is, this helps pay my rent. Because that's what I started with. When I started, it wasn't like, oh, I have to go build a 6-figure business now. It was, what little thing can I start creating on the side that was one less bill that didn't come from my main whatever I was making, it was like bonus money. And I think, again, now with podcasts, with things like Masterclass or YouTube or online courses, there's more knowledge now than ever. So it's not about not knowing how to do it. It's literally just starting to put the time in. And okay, here's my leisure time. And I still have time to show up every day to create baby steps, to create something that, because this isn't going to be the last tragedy. I started my first business in the midst of a tragedy in 08. Because of that, I was set up in a position where financially I was able to weather the storm in 20 when this one hit, because of what I started back then. And what I tell people is, this isn't the last tragedy, economic crash, whatever that we're going to have. The only question is, will you be better prepared for the next one by what you start doing now? And that's, for me, I didn't know 2020 was going to happen in 08, but I just started building it in the midst of the last one and was prepped for here, and I'll continue. And so what I put pressure on myself is, cool, Jimmy, what are 2 other income streams? What are other things that you can do? Because I feel like the more of these we have, the better set up we are to whatever's going to come down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think the not being aware of what is coming down the road, you really, I think if 2020 taught us anything on a global scale,
sure,
you don't know. I mean, you have. We thought we knew. Yeah, people had, I think, individual tragedies. Obviously localized tragedies. There's been some big things that have happened, but on a global scale, and just things that nobody ever thought. I mean, whoever thought they would take kids out of school, whoever thought they would, close businesses down, all these things that nobody ever expected. You wouldn't be able to go to, the park, you wouldn't be able to, all these things that people always,
restaurants are closing. And I mean, so things that didn't happen in the housing crash that were touched this time around. Because there really wasn't anything that didn't get touched this time around,
Everything was. And I think I this reminded me when you were talking that I put out a tweet, which I rarely do. Usually, I share the podcast and stuff on there, but for sanity's sake, I do my best to stay off of Twitter.
Right.
And that's between you, me, and Jack Dorsey now. So I posted this. This was on March 15th of 2020. I said, some will come out of this weaker, some will come out stronger, some will come out fearful, some will come out braver, some will come out softer, some will come out savage. Hashtag what will you become? Hashtag COVID-19, hashtag savage.
Wow.
I think when we got into this, there was a lot of immediate fear. I had it was a 5 days after you and I had our podcast last year. My beard company, Captain Coop's Beard Company, launched online. 5 days. And again, I had been in a relatively comfortable position for 20 years of my life. Started in radio when I was a teenager and was when I was 38. And I don't want to say reinvented the wheel because I'm still, talking shit and, wearing black. But, first venture into entrepreneurship, started a notebook, started writing things down. Like, what are you going to do with your life?
Right.
How are you going to figure things out? Interest, a mutual friend comes in and is like, hey, we can make all this can work. So 5 days after you and I had our podcast, my company launched online, had a fairly successful, holiday season, started getting into some wholesale stuff in early 2020. And then really in February, it was growing faster than I thought it was going to.
Wow.
I was like, I 20 years of knowing people and knowing somebody who knows somebody that networking, got me into some places. We were, scheduling trips to Nashville to talk to some barbershops down there. We were, the ball was rolling faster than I thought it was going to. And then they shut all of our major source of income. All the barbershops and salons got shut down on March 18th, the day after St. Patrick's Day.
Wow. Yeah.
So you have this trajectory. You're feeling good about things, the investment that I made to start this company was basically closing down my 401k from my previous employer and saying, okay, I'm going to take this investment to start this. Now, I was not stupid about it. I covered some bills for months, but I mean, the majority of that money came out and it went into, this startup because I wanted to go into it and not be completely behind the eight ball, if it didn't pan out exactly how, I had forecasted.
Right.
When that trajectory went up the hill and then the cliff came and it all came tumbling down. Yeah. I mean, I think that was 2 days before that post was when they shut the barbershops down.
Wow.
But over the course of, 9 months and 15 days to flatten the curve. Sounds about right. Finding different ways to keep the brand relevant, to keep it afloat, to refocus our energy on individual sales, to really work on our marketing. It wasn't great. I mean, I had to pick up another job. It's entrepreneurship isn't like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I mean, this firsthand. You don't go, today I'm an entrepreneur, and then I got money coming in. It's like
you don't get that. You don't get the entrepreneur check every Tuesday or whatever. You put that on a employee. Or employer, me. Oh, well, how do I pay me? Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. It really doesn't.
Which bank account did this doesn't come out of my account because there's nothing in there. I don't know. It's just a magic entrepreneur account that everybody gets to throw money into.
I keep hearing this magic word called entrepreneurship. Who's paying those?
I know. Everybody wants to do this job. No, not everybody's cut out for it. But I do think what you learn through all of these experiences is that if you can find ways, and it's your passion. I think that's got to be key. I think you have to have some sort of interest in it on a personal level. You have to be tied to kind of what you're doing and something you enjoy. Jimmy loves throwing weights around and friggin' working out and talking to people and getting people inspired. I mean, that's, the things that you're doing really coincide with actually how you live your life, your morning routine, which I believe in. We'll throw the website up here as we wrap up the show in just a bit. But you have, the things that you should be doing to get your day started off, no matter where, if you're going off to, work for somebody you hate, it's still good to have a better mindset to start that day than it is to kind of wake up and go, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
Let me scroll through Facebook and see if I can inspire myself. That doesn't work. Don't try that. But I think if you can dig down deep, because sometimes you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to embrace the suck, which we've talked about on both podcasts.
Yes.
That we've had so far, and now on this one. And you can kind of weather storms. Man, when that next tragedy happens, whatever it happens to be, if it's a personal tragedy, if it's, regionally, locally, globally, again, who knows at this point? I mean, nothing right now is really out of the realm of possibility.
No, not at all.
They announced aliens exist during the middle of COVID, and everybody was like,
of course.
Like, wait, what? Yeah, so unidentified. This is real. Like we've had, like, I have a question.
Right.
No questions. Okay, cool.
Okay,
like we just let it slide.
Just throw it on the pile with everything else.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to see here. Just, they're taking over. So really nothing is off the table. But if you can, weather things, create those calluses in your mind, in your, physically in your body, if it's a workout thing, the next time it becomes easier because like you have said multiple times during this show, you kind of set yourself up and you go through these things and you learn it and you embrace that suck and you're like, man, this isn't good. The next time you're like, oh, that's right. That's why they were filling me with all this way too much information that I could no way comprehend in that shorter period of time. It's so that next time you can handle it.
Yeah. I go back to even what I started thinking about is sometimes we'll panic in a certain situation the first time. And if I can make like a fitness analogy, two of them actually, I think about when I went and auditioned for Sean T to be in the Insanity DVDs. And I went into a room where the other people in the room had been in his test group for 30 days. So I was the outsider coming in. And I didn't know it was all happening so fast. Again, just like I talked about in the musical theater thing, I was just in reaction mode. Oh my God, this is so fast, blah, 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 blah. Same thing the very first time I ever did any kind of like CrossFit open workout where I don't know my name. I can't see. I'm just, but once you start raising your own bar and requiring more of yourself, you're putting yourself in these situations that kind of put you in these panic modes a little bit. The more we do that, when something outside of you comes and puts you in a panic mode, now, if I have something crazy strenuous physically or a very intense open type workout or something where I'm having to throw weights around and then jump into this and come back into this, whether it's a handstand push-ups and to lift these weights and to go for this run, it still sucks, but my mind isn't racing so bad where I know I'm like, okay, I've done this before now, and you can calm down. It's like what you hear about a quarterback in his second or third year where they're like, oh, the game started slowing down for him. In the midst of all these bodies going, he can see the situation, know what's going on, and anticipate. It's the exact same thing when it comes to what the standard we hold ourselves to in our morning routine, or not just with our morning routine, but our daily routines, when we're requiring more of ourselves than other people are. So then when that outside thing comes and punches us in the face, we can embrace the punch and go, okay, I've been here, or I've asked this much of myself that I can react, that I don't just crumble, or I don't just panic, or I don't just feel overwhelmed. But you have to put yourself in that overwhelmed situation for the first time. The very first time you ever go take that cold plunge and you're like breath taken away from you, the next time you go, okay, I know what this feeling is, that my heart rate still goes up, but I know how to respond to it, right? And for me, I think that's, you said it so well, is once you've gone through these things, the next time you can assess the situation, you can think through it. You're not just going to crumble in the corner. You're not just going to be so overwhelmed that you freeze. And again, that just comes from repetition. It just comes from putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations and getting out of our comfort zone a little bit every day.
And you're down in Dallas, as we've talked about, enjoying, probably above freezing temperatures, but neither here nor there. But for you guys down there, and that the weirdest thing about all of this is the whole like we're all in this together thing was kind of sort of bullshit, like right off the bat. Like, well, not really, because some people are on much bigger boats, and some
Yeah.
people are on little pontoons, and some people are on rafts, and some people are holding on to the door of the Titanic, as it
Right.
seems. So we're not really all in this together. But then you also have the fact that state to state, county to county,
Very
city to
different.
city, like rules are completely different. So it's especially if you have a lot of friends and family. Like my mother lives in Northern California, so I talked to her, and she just talks about how, like, what are they doing here? I know, I'm like, oh, sending pictures. Like we went out and had a beer the other day. She's like, wait a minute, what? You can?
Yeah.
Like, I haven't got my hair done in a year.
Just here too. They're like,
Yeah.
we can't get our hair cut. And I was like, oh yeah. It's like things are different in Texas, or
Yeah.
yeah. And so it isn't all the same boat. You're right.
But what's it been like for you? Because I know that you, when you did your gyms close at all? Did you have to? Because I know you're a gym guy, but then you kind of obviously you have that backup plan always with the home workouts. So what was it like for you, and not just you, but for the people that you coach, that you inspire, that you talk to kind of get them through what really was, and we talked about this earlier, forcible couch sitting.
Yeah.
Sit on your couch for 6 months, 9 months and 15 days to flatten the curve.
I think initially we all go through shock, right? There's the shock of the situation. But then eventually somewhere along the way, like it's like mourning or something. It's like eventually somewhere you do have the shock. You are mourning the loss of like a day-to-day life and what things were like. But then you have to go, okay, here are the new rules. What's my new normal? How do I move forward? How do I still be productive? Because if we just continue to wait and go, wow, I can't wait till things go back to normal, or I can't wait till we go back. And eventually at some point, we've all got to figure out how do we survive or thrive in these rules instead of, again, like I said earlier, there are so many things outside of these walls that I don't get to choose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't get to make the choices that the counties or the states or the government. Yes, I can go vote, but I don't get to make the day-to-day choices. And yeah, initially here in Texas, it was like everywhere else. Bars, restaurants, gyms, everything closed. It was just at home. I was very thankful I had a background in in-home fitness. I'm glad I had a background in one of my businesses is helping people get started in in-home fitness. So that part I leaned into. But then it was just like, cool, what can I do? I have become a morning walk person. I feel like those kind of the old people in the mall. Morning walks have become a thing of mine now. Now, we're pretty open here in Texas, but it was something that I added to my routine that I realized, oh, this is really nice because I never was outside. I mean, especially coming back here in New York City, used to be outside walking all the time. And so now I'm like, oh, this is great for my mind. Here's a great way to get out and move my body. And so it was just a matter of what the next thing was, right? But it was a shock for everybody. Now, granted, there's certain people that lockdown's still happening, but regardless of what your silo is, there's an initial shock, there's an initial depression and mourning time, but then there's got to be a part where you go, okay, this is what this is. I don't know how long this is going to last. What can I do with it? How do I move forward? How do I make the best of this situation? Or we can continue to mourn what we lost. Oh, I wish it was like the good old days, right? And we never appreciate the good old days while they're happening because we always think something better is coming or something better is past us. And I think it just got to the point I'm like, all right, this is the way it is. So for me, teaching online workshops, finding virtual stages, doing way more podcasts. I've done more podcasts this year than, so for somebody like me that you're like, oh, Jimmy, you talk for a living. Cool. Right. Where else can I talk? How else can I still serve people? And real quick, before we wrap up, I also want to say, those people that we talk about create something for yourself or use this time. I do realize that like full-time entrepreneurship is not what everybody's been designed to do. And that's fine. That's something I had to learn because it was in me. Once I got the taste of like, I don't think I'd be a very good employee anymore now because once I had that taste of like, oh, I can do what I want to do when I want to do, I don't handle the other. But there's certain people that there is comfort in that. And there's nothing wrong with that. My only encouragement is with all this time, split the Netflix time in half, split whatever time in half, and at least create something for yourself that's going to create a skill set, serve some people, create maybe a little extra income, because you just never know where that's going to go. And like I said, when I look back, where my business is now was never the goal. It wasn't that. I look at all these what seemed like tiny little stupid insignificant choices at the time made all the difference in the world later. And that's day to day. It goes back to the compound effect, right? I'm going to just come in a big loop. Is these little tiny things that we choose to do or not to do every day. You're like, oh, that's no big deal. I just didn't do it today. Becomes 2 days, becomes 3, becomes, oh, I kind of do it whenever. Then we never end up in another place, right? The only way we get something we didn't have is to start doing things that we weren't doing on a consistent basis. So, I understand the emotions. I understand this has been shock to people's system. People have lost jobs and lifestyles and everything. And we've had a time to mourn that. Now, how do we come together? How do I serve? How do I, wrap my arms around somebody and go, cool, let's take some steps together. And it really has been something I've enjoyed doing, is like, cool, let me walk you through this. What is something you could do? You don't have to do what I'm doing, but let me at least be a professional encourager right now, because I feel like the world's missing that right now.
No, 100%. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Jimmy. I think there does need to be taking a lot of good points out of this, is that you do need to have and take this time to find the things that you really enjoy doing, because you can learn those things. There used to be a big fear of, I really like pottery.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do like there are the avenues to learn something. And now with perhaps some more time to learn these things, go after that. Find that thing that's kind of been in the back of your mind. And for a lot of people, there's probably been that little thing in the back of their head for a really long time. Like, I really would like to be able to learn how to do this. It'd be super cool if I could, learn some carpentry stuff, just some small. And once you kind of fall down that rabbit hole and you start to learn every single day or every other day, or again, if you cut your Netflix time in half, Mandalorian only comes out every Friday, people. Well, it did. It was a great ending, by the way. It was
a great ending. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's like, what can I do? And now more than ever, whatever that thing is, you're like, oh, it would always have been cool if I had to know more about this other end. Maybe it's just wanting to know more about an industry you weren't in, or maybe it is a skill set. There has never been more ways to learn that than now. Back in the day, like, you had to be an apprentice. You had to know somebody to teach you something. Now there's a 12-year-old on YouTube that'll teach me anything, basically, like as long as I'm willing to like humble myself enough to be coachable and to try some things outside of my comfort zone and allow an expert potentially to guide me along the way, and be willing to be bad at something for a little bit. There is that's the other thing. You don't get to skip the step of sucking at something to be good. We all have inherent talents or things that we may naturally gravitate towards, but none of us get to be an expert or be good at something before we're willing to be bad. And somewhere along the way in society, asking questions or just being vulnerable and being like, hey, I'm beginning this. Take some time. I love watching people's journey. If I know somebody's like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm rooting those people on. And I feel like that's most places. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people are like, oh, especially if you shine the light on yourself and you're like, hey, trying something new in my comfort zone, follow along the journey. Dude, to me, that's fascinating. And I'm whatever I can do. Like, how can I help? Can I comment? Can I subscribe? Can I buy your first little trinket? Like, I want to root these people on that I know that are literally raising their hands and saying, hey, all this bad stuff happened in 2020. I don't know. I kind of like this, and I'm going to move this way. And I don't know if it's going to become anything, but I'm going to invite you to come along on the journey, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube show or drawing or pottery or a video game, whatever the thing is. Man, I want to champion that person that's at least willing to be vulnerable to say, I'm probably going to suck at this. This is way out of my comfort zone, but I've always wanted to see if I can sing or play the guitar or do whatever the thing is. We're going to cheer those people on. So I just say that because hopefully that takes a little bit of the fear of, oh, I can't present this until it's perfect, or I can't present this until it's a finished product. No, it's no different than when you're in the grocery store and you're standing in a line that's taking forever and you're so ready to just go gripe out the cashier when you get up there. When you get to the front of the line, they have the giant button that says trainee. You're like, oh, bless your heart. And you're like helping them sack the groceries because you're like, oh, you're new. I'm sorry. I was such an ass. I was just about to like fuss at you. God bless you. Let me help. It's the same thing when we just go trainee. I'm a trainee entrepreneur. I'm a trainee in whatever this new thing is I'm trying to launch in 2020. People will come and want to cheer you on and champion you.
No, I think that's huge because the norm is to go and, I hate to keep on harping on social media, but I'm going to, is because people have a tendency to go and they see the final product.
Yep.
Go and they see that person who is setting a new PR or is, hey, I'm just going to take on my guitar and strum me this song. And it's like,
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Like, but the real thing, and a friend of mine was learning how to do muscle ups, and has shown her journey from like the first time, because you see people do them. If you don't know what muscle up is and you're interested, go and look at like the first thing you'll see was someone doing it like this insane move. It's like pull up and
they make it look effortless, right? They're like, oh, that's easy. And you're like, no.
But now you have people that are showing their journey into like the first time trying to get up. And now she's at a point where it's kind of like, one arm and then there's some movement, but that's showing the journey. That's showing that it's not always this polished product. And maybe one of the good things about COVID is that there's been more of that. You're not seeing as much polished product in the music industry. A lot of the artists who aren't able to go out and perform are saying, we don't really do acoustic stuff, but we're going to try to learn our song.
Well, they're going to try something different.
So you get to see a lot of that stuff. Jimmy Hayes Nelson, let's pop this bad boy up here and show people your pretty face, thecoachjimmy.com. Look at that. Look at this beautiful website here.
Thanks, man.
Download the new ebook. Great stuff. You can connect with Jimmy on all the social medias here on his website as well. That's thecoachjimmy.com. Also where you are on all the socials, right? The Coach Jimmy.
The Coach Jimmy on all socials. Send me a DM. I answer all my own stuff. I would love to connect and just help and let me be your professional encourager, man. Like reach out. Let me know how I can help you craft a better story.
Coach Jimmy, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it more than you know.
Thank you, man. It's been a blast. Until next time.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Hayes Nelson, again, the Coach Jimmy on all the socials. You can go and check him out. Thank you to you, all of you who are tuned in on all of these social media platforms, on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, also on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/NoLimitCooper. Appreciate you. The podcast will obviously be dropping here soon, whichever platform you listen to, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, the iHeart Music app. We're also on Audible now. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how that happened, but we're on Audible. You can check that out. Make sure you subscribe. Leave a review. That would be fantastic. If you want to be a part of the free speech revolution, please email me, Cooper@welcometocooperville.com, and we can make some things happen. Because as you've heard perhaps on this show, we expanded into this whole live stream podcast thing. We are now taking it from this to what will be a daily live show. Every day, 3 hours a day, talking to people, talking big, talking smack, inspiring, all the fun stuff. And I hope you can join us on there too. Until next time, thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy your day. Take care of one another and yourselves.